Okay, today's Wednesday, and we're going to add a very important component to our knowledge of circuits. That component is the capacitor. Okay, very important component. Basically, it's made up of two plates with some material in between the two plates that is insulating and have what we call a dielectric constant associated with it. The material itself, it's called a dielectric, meaning that it does not support direct current electricity. However, as we shall see, for AC circuits, it does allow AC signals to get through. So basically, in DC, we use resistors, okay, and the current has no problem going one way or the other direction through a resistor. With a capacitor, however, there is some amount of current that can leak through, but when that capacitor builds up a certain voltage, it stops the current from flowing anymore. So basically, it stops DC. So a capacitor is an excellent way to separate your DC from your AC. In other words, you might have a circuit that uses DC uh, for certain reasons to do certain functions, and then we will have a circuit that will actually work on AC to amplify things, for example. And we want to make sure that the AC portion of it doesn't mix, mess up the DC portion of the circuit. So we use a capacitor to separate the two. Or we could also use a transformer, which we'll talk about next week. But normally we use a nice capacitor, and we will find out that capacitors will leak or will let certain currents through, voltages or currents through of a specific frequency value. Okay, it's really related to the frequency of the signal that's going to be let through. So the capacitor is used for tuning. Anytime you want to tune in a channel or a TV circuit or whatever, you use a capacitor together with other components, mainly an inductor, which we'll talk about next week. So the capacitor adds capability to electronics. Without it, we could not have the nice things that we have, nice tools that we have these today. We will also, we'll go through, today we'll describe what a capacitor is built, how it's some of the mathematics behind it, and a number of other things. I've also have a little quiz for you today. It's basically 13 questions, of which you only need to do 10. All right, so pick the 10 easiest ones and hand the test back to me. Send it through me, either through Classroom or my email. Okay. And then tomorrow we will really get into the guts of why capacitors work the way they do and why they are so useful to us. The other thing that capacitance uses is photography. Okay, it used to be that when you take a digital photograph of something, you use a capacitive means to store the image. Okay, we use a microcircuit with tiny capacitors in there that grab a certain that they grab a certain amount of light. Okay, and store that until we can use it and send it on into a picture. So Capacitors are probably one of the more important uh, components that we will have, and we will use them everywhere. Use them everywhere. But they also are a unit that fails quite often. Okay, you can usually tell when it fails because it leaves a nice residue behind it, or a nice brown spot on a PW board. Okay, there are some capacitors that have a polarity to them. Those type of capacitors need to be polarized every so often. Don't you can't keep them in storage for very long. They need to be exercised. Otherwise, they could blow up on you when you use them. And they also need to be placed into a circuit in the proper orientation. All right. Okay, so let's get going. And if you have any questions, you want to know further, more information about it, give me a call or let me know by email. I'll send you more information and anything that you really want. So good luck.